When I first did my movie, I think Blindness, for example, in 1997, that was a fully Asian movie. It was a female director who was Chinese. It was two female lead actors who were also Chinese. So the story was based off of a classic Chinese story. Flash forward 1997 to 2007 and The Dark Knight. So I'm now in The Dark Knight. I'm in a cast full of many races, from Christian Bale to Morgan Freeman to Michael Caine, and it was, you know, you can see the change already to be included in a cast that is so diverse, and have the race not be an issue at all, you know, in that film. So even within that short period of time, from 1997 to 2007, it was, you know, you can see the change, and now it's even more obvious, especially with the, you know, with the success of a lot of co-productions that we have seen this year. A very big movie, The Meg, was very successful. It was a co-production. Skyscraper did very well as well, with Dwayne Johnson and myself in the lead. When I came out many years ago, I was always looking at the movies like Big Trouble in Little China, or, you know, The Joyluck Club, and, you know, hoping to be able to get a supporting role in these films. Never did I think that, you know, there would come a day when I could be you know, sharing the lead in a movie with Dwayne Johnson, you know, the biggest movie star in the world, or, you know, being part of an ensemble team in Contagion with Matt Damon and Marion Cotillard and Kate Winslet, you know. So over the years, yes, you know, I mean, I've seen a lot of changes, and I think as the world becomes more global, and where there are more platforms to show these films as well, like Netflix, I understand, is also here now in India, that there will be more opportunities, you know, for Asian actors to be part of global stories.
Yeah, please, gentlemen.
Sir, you just told about screening movies. How do you actually screen a movie, and how do you decide that you want to make a movie out of that story? From where do you screen these stories?
Oh, when you look at stories?
How do you select them, and how do you process them before you finalize your story?
I think that, you know, I mean, I look at stories as to whether they are, you know, whether they are truthful to my experience, my personal experience. You know, I look for characters that I can identify with. I look for characters that are real and well written. You know, in the past, let's say maybe 20 years ago, when you look at these scripts, you know, the characters are just to support the main cast. You know, they don't have personalities, they don't have characters, and you know, I think those roles do not really help Asian actors, you know, have a presence in Hollywood. I think the choice of roles have to be, you know, meaningful, you know, and have to be well written, you know, before I would choose to do them.
Yeah, Shama, please.
Hi, Chin. She's Shama from DD News.
Hi, Shama.
You mentioned about Satyajit Ray movies. Have you been able to see any new modern movies from Indian cinema? Also, when we're talking about new cinemas, what do you think of the technology when you've already done The Dark Knight in 2012?
The technology is always changing. I remember even when I did The Dark Knight to 2012, and even 2012 to Independence Day Resurgence, and with the same director, the technology was already very different. By the time we got to Skyscraper, and even Ghost in the Shell, all these movies were being converted to 3D already. So every movie has three formats when they open, right? The normal cinema, 3D cinema, an IMAX cinema. So now I think they're looking to do 4D. And some 4D cinemas are already around. There, in Southeast Asia. I remember when I was in Thailand, you have 4D, and I saw Titanic in 4D, and you feel like the boat is moving. So I think the technology is always changing, but it's good because it allows people to, with any kind of creativity, a lot more opportunities to make movies. In the past, when we shot a movie on film, right, it's big reels of film that you have to film, and you can only shoot 20 minutes, and then you have to change the reel. Now with digital, you can keep shooting. You can shoot so much, and then you can also save time, in terms of processing the film. When we were shooting The Dark Knight, for example, and The Dark Knight, a lot of it was shot on IMAX. Now, IMAX, all of you have seen IMAX movies. The IMAX movie is shot on an IMAX camera, and the IMAX camera is very, very big. So if you look at those cameras back there, IMAX camera is about maybe 5 times, 6 times the size of that camera, and the real one frame of film is the size of your hand. Right? So that is a very big piece of film. So whenever we shot the action sequences in The Dark Knight, for example, on IMAX, those film will take a few days to process in the lab and then send back to the director to watch. So there's no immediate playback. Now, when you make a film now, you can shoot, and then you can look, and you can say, oh, okay, that's good, that's not good. But if you're shooting those, in old times in film and IMAX, you shoot and you don't see your film for a while, and then it comes back. And by the time you see if there's anything wrong with it, it's too late to change. So it was a very different time. And I think now, because of the cost effectiveness of making a movie, I think there are many more opportunities for stories to be told, whether they're Indian stories or Chinese stories. Hollywood stories, I think it kind of equalizes the playing field.
Any Indian movies you've seen lately?
There was this really, I think everyone has seen this movie, Dangal, right? The wrestling movie. And I think that movie was so successful for good reason, because it has all the values. In terms of family values, Asian values, and it speaks to emotions and the heart. So movies like that, which carry this kind of universal subjects and themes, are very, very, stand a good chance of finding a global audience.
Morning.
Yeah,
I'm
morning.
Saikat from All India Radio.
Yeah,
It's
hi.
National Radio India. You have worked with theatre, Hollywood, and web series. Please share your experience of the transition through this.
Wow. The transition. Theater is theater, right? Theater has been around for centuries, from olden times, from Shakespeare and 1800s, and so the tradition of theater is is very classical. So I started with classical training, which was very specific. You learn voice, movement, dance, singing, projection, voice, script, everything. So the theater was a great place to train, I feel, and so starting out and doing theater for the first 7 years of my life, 8 years of acting, was very good. And then you move to television, and television is very different. Television is speed. It's fast. But I hear that the Indian film industry moves very fast as well. I mean, you shoot movies and shoot television very, very quickly. So it took a while to get used to that, because it's very fast and you shoot so many scenes a day and there's so much script and so much dialogue. So that's the difference between theater and television. Then you move to film, and then film is very film is very romantic. I feel film is very the scale of film is so big. You know, it's like going to Disneyland every day. The scale of film, especially with the films that I've done. Dark Knight was about 180 million, I think. 2012 was a $200 million movie. Skyscraper, Ghost in the Shell, all 100 million plus movies. When you go on those sets, they're so large. You don't shoot that many scenes a day, but they're very big and they take forever to light. And I remember when shooting on 2012, there were some days when we had 1,000 extras. Imagine 1,000 extras. Even the people to take care of the extras is a lot of people already. I find that film is really like a dream come true. It's a very, very grand kind of environment to work in.
And web series?
The Marco Polo was very different as well. I think Marco Polo for Netflix, the web series is somewhere in between television and film. So I think if you compare Marco Polo, which is similar in budget to Game of Thrones, I think it was 100 odd million for the movie, for the series of 10 episodes. You feel like you're shooting something between a TV show and a movie. It's not a movie, but it's also not TV. So that kind of filming is fun because you get 10 episodes and they give you 10 episodes and you read it and you do the film. It's like a very long movie that you do. It's like doing a 10-hour long movie. So, but it's in television format. So it's a very strange thing. I mean, this limited series that we now have with Netflix and Amazon Prime and Hulu and HBO. I think that's somewhere. But that also gives the filmmakers, the ability to then make TV closer to film.
Yeah. Please.
Your experience of coming to the festival and coming to Goa?
My experience to coming to Goa is the hospitality is amazing. I was over at the hotel and I was, they made me a cup of coffee and then he asked how the coffee was and I was like, yeah, it's good, but it's not like I'm used to. And he was like, wow, what kind of coffee are you used to? And I described it and he says, let me make you another one. And he kept making it until he got it right. I thought that was amazing. So hospitality was, the people are so hospitable. The environment is wonderful. To have the festival at the coastal city reminds me of being at Cannes, really, because Cannes is also a coastal city. It's the really wonderful environment. The opening ceremony was very fun and entertaining, and I also was very happy to be able to meet your new your new superstars. I think it was Akshay, Kumar, Karan Johar. Because normally in my mind when I'm thinking of of India, I think of your king, what do you call him? The Shah Rukh Khan, right? And then for some of the other older actors, Irfan Khan, because we are all in Hollywood. He has done Hollywood films too, and we know the same people, I think, as well, even though I haven't met him before. So my idea of Indian stars are the older ones. So coming to this IFFI was very, very fun for me because I get to meet all the new ones too and the younger superstars.
Why is Hollywood the ultimate destination?
Hollywood is not the ultimate destination. I think Hollywood is a very important destination, but it's not the ultimate destination. The Hollywood has a history of, let's say, about 100 years, I think, of filmmaking, and within this history, they have built a very, very effective system of making movies. They have an infrastructure that can support the making of a $200 million movie. You know, they have the best technology, and not only the technology, the people who are also operating the technology. Now, the best filmmakers like Steven Soderbergh, who I work with for Contagion, he has been developing the red camera for the longest time with the camera, with the, you know, the people who own Red. Chris Nolan, for example, is working, you know, has worked with IMAX for a long time, and to improve the quality of the cameras and to make sure that they can be, you know, they can be used to film movies like Dunkirk, for example, and to be put in the plane. And so, working there, you're at the cutting edge of new technology. You know, whether it's IMAX or 3D. Or, you know, Dolby Atmos. Obviously, James Cameron himself is also developing new ways of shooting his Avatar movies, which he's shooting right now. So in that respect, it is a very exciting place. It has the, you know, it has a good infrastructure that, you know, that filmmakers can learn from. But in terms of storytelling, you know, storytelling is universal talent. It's a universal impulse, and every culture, every country, every people have their own impulses to tell their own stories. So as long as they get the support, you know, either of the film festivals within the country or the authorities within the country, you know, I think we will be able to tell the stories that are meaningful to us, and I think that is the ultimate destination for us.
And the experience of working with Nolan and as well as Johnson.
Dwayne Johnson.
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan is a genius. You know, I think he is a very thoughtful man. He is a very he runs a very quiet set. You know, I mean, for a movie that large, he does very big movies, but you won't be able to tell because he's so quiet on set. You know, he speaks very softly, thoughtfully, but he is like a general. You know, he has the whole movie planned out in front of him. If you look at The Dark Knight, I remember reading the script of The Dark Knight for the first time. It was so complicated that I had to take a break in the middle of the script reading, so that I can think properly and then continue reading it, because the script was so complex. Chris, you feel very safe working in the hands of a visionary director like Chris, because he has the whole movie in his head before he even shoots a single frame. On top of the fact that for most directors who shoot movies that big, they have a second unit. And I don't know if you're familiar with the concept of the second unit. The second unit, third unit, they go generally to pick up shots and shoot different things that the director will not shoot. He will shoot the main scenes that he wants to shoot. Christopher Nolan does not have a second unit or a third unit. He shoots the entire movie by himself, right? I mean, so he directs every scene in the movie. Every shot you see in the movie is directed by him, and he sees it. I remember when I went in to do some ADR. ADR is voice recording. You know, sometimes when we film and then, you know, the sound is not so good, we go back in to dub it. I had to dub one word, and he was there to hear that one word being dubbed. So he's very, you know, his attention to detail is bar none. Dwayne Johnson is Dwayne Johnson. He's the biggest movie star in the world at the moment. He is a giant man, 6'5", big and friendly, and has as big a heart as his size. So working with him was great because he is super committed. He is physically gifted to do the action sequences, and he really, you know, I think he really takes care of his fans. I remember one time when we were shooting till 4 in the morning, and we shot in Vancouver. Any of you been to Vancouver? It's very cold and it's raining most of the time. And this was about the same time last year when we were shooting Skyscraper. We shot to 4 in the morning, and we got into our cars, and we were all going back to our hotels. There were people outside the studio waiting for him, and they waited for hours and hours inside the rain, right, and very cold. 4 a.m. in the morning, we've shot for 15 hours. He stops his car in the rain. He gets out, takes pictures, says hi to everybody because they waited for him for that long. So it's great to work with someone, you know, who has that kind of philosophy in life as well.
Anybody else?
Hello, this is Mahesh.
Yeah,
I'd
Mahesh.
like to ask you about, first of all, India has a very thriving theatre culture in every part of the country. Can you tell us something about theatre in Singapore?
Theatre in Singapore is still, you know, I mean, theatre in Singapore is actually very vibrant. You know, I think when I started doing theatre in Singapore was the 80s. And I think, you know, because Singapore found its independence in the 60s, it's still a pretty young country. And as a young country, you know, we're looking for our identity, we're looking for our voices. And the theatre is where you find your voice and your identity, you know. So at that point in time, you know, the film industry wasn't as developed. We didn't do that many movies a year back in the 80s. Television, they did more of, but, you know, they had a lot of help from the people who were doing TV shows and movies in Hong Kong. So that was what was being done in television. Film was still very young, and they didn't make that many movies a year. So a lot of activity was happening in the theater, and the theater was a very exciting time to be, and even now as well, you know. And I think that the development of any kind of entertainment industry is not just the actors, right? I mean, I think that ultimately when you start finding more writers, that is where also the whole industry gets pushed forwards, you know, because these are the people who are telling your stories. So the whole industry has to move at the same time. I think the directors, the development of directors, the development of the writers, and the development of the actors all have to move at the same time. Even costume designers or sound designers or lighting designers, you know, I think that is when you see a whole industry flourishing. And I think at this point in time, theatre in Singapore is experiencing a very nice growth, I think, and development.
Yeah, maybe the last question from the lady.
Much is being made of Indian presence and the global stage, especially in Hollywood. What is your impression of that?
Of Indian...
of Indian actors having made it in Hollywood, like Priyanka and Deepika, and of course Irfan you mentioned.
All right. I'm always happy to see Asian faces on the Hollywood screen. I feel like you know, being Chinese, I was born and raised in Singapore, but ethnically I'm Chinese, and I feel like, you know, every time I see an Asian face, I feel like we are kin, right? We are family in a way. So so I'm very happy to see like Priyanka Chopra, who actually did Baywatch, right? Which has the same producers, Bo Flynn, as Skyscraper. So Priyanka or Irfan or Deepika, right, in XXX. You know, I remember when I started doing obviously the films and TV shows in Hollywood, you'll be the only Asian person. And by the time I got to doing Marco Polo, I go on set and there's like Asian people everywhere, and that's a Hollywood production. So I welcome, I would welcome, you know, any aspiring actors here in India to you know, to be open to the experience of working in Hollywood, but continue to tell the stories at home. So I think in that way you get the best of both worlds. You get to leave your mark on the global stage, and at the same time, you will, you may be able to come back home with a different kind of understanding of filmmaking and TV making, which I feel I've been very grateful and blessed to have.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chen.
Thank you.
We are privileged to have you here. Thank you, media friends. Thank you, Mishra sir. Thank you, Chaitanya sir. And with this, we will conclude this press conference. Any... Would you like to have a TikTok? Some channels want to have this national channel.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So maybe the media friends from the electronic media would want to have, Chen would like to have TikTok with this here itself.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. How are you? I'm very well.